Let's hit it. Hootie Hoot Productions presents the Sports Deli Podcast, where everyone deserves a seat at the table, where we discuss the intersection between race and sports, mental health, leadership, and equality. To find out more about the Sports Deli Podcast, check us out online at thesportsdelipodcast.com. We are starting to have free giveaways. If you hear giveaway anywhere in the podcast, send us an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com with giveaway in the subject heading, and in the body of the email, give us the answer to that podcast's specific question.
When you hear someone say, make America great again, the first question you have is, well, when was America great?
What I would say about Tom
Brady, yeah.
If you don't want to be in this fight, then don't put a Make America Great hat up in your locker. Silently now, it appears that you are with the other group. Just don't get in the way.
Yeah. Stephen A. Smith is my alter ego. Go somewhere else with that shit.
John, she's roasting your ass.
Colin Kaepernick, he's a hero in the same way that John Carlos and Tommy Smith were heroes.
That when George Floyd called out to his mother, he called out to all mothers, and I heard his call.
So do you have white privilege?
Absolutely. Now we have to be a voice as white people.
African American women last year changed the course of this nation. Women are the backbone, and now we need to support the souls that they stand on.
And now, whether you're folding laundry, driving, exercising, or cooking, grab your favorite deli sandwich or bagel and your favorite beverage, and let's do this together in the Sports Deli. Auntie, take us away. We're so honored on this fourth day of Emotional Intelligence and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Ladies and gentlemen, here's a call to action. Please do your monthly self-breast examinations, as prevention is the key. To welcome Emmy-nominated TV producer, international best-selling author, speaker, podcast host, soon to be, Netflix sleeper star, and thought leader, Stephanie Arnold. In 2013, she was clinically dead for 37 seconds after suffering an amniotic fluid embolism, an AFE, immediately after giving birth to her second child. But she knew it was going to happen months before because she had premonitions about it, but no one believed her. She blew doctors away because of what she described in detail about what happened while she was dead. But the one person who also understandably skeptical was her anesthesiologist. But despite her skepticism, she made sure there was extra blood available during the delivery, and it was a big reason why she was able to survive. Oh, and the anesthesiologist's name, ironically, was Grace. She was in a medically induced coma for 6 days afterwards. 2 years later, she published her book, 37 Seconds, which she'll talk about today, which is about survival, premonitions, intuition, the past, the present, and the future. And she's part of a new Netflix series called Surviving Death. She currently serves on the board of directors for the AFE Foundation and was named one of today's Chicago Women's 100 Women of Inspiration. She has a club on Clubhouse called The Sixth Sense, and it was on Breakfast with Champions that I first heard her story. She's competed in bikini bodybuilding competitions. She shares a birthday with Satchel Paige, Ringo Starr, and Michelle Kwan, and was born the same year as Mark Wahlberg, Winona Ryder, Jada Pinkett Smith, and Chris Tucker. She's an amazing mom and wife. She's inspired millions around the globe and is on a mission to help others realize that connecting with our sixth sense can not only enhance our lives, but can very well save them. She now dedicates her time to speaking and advocacy work, spreading awareness about positive doctor communication, trauma recovery, and discovering meaning and purpose in our personal and professional lives. She's been featured on Dr. Oz, Good Morning America, Netflix, Today, NPR, Steve Harvey, and many others. And today we will talk about her incredible story of trauma to triumph. You can find her on our website at stephaniearnold.net and on Twitter and Instagram at stephaniearnold37, of course. Stephanie, it was really an honor to meet you on Clubhouse, and for you to take the time out today is really humbling. But welcome to the Sports Deli podcast, where everyone deserves a seat at the table.
This is awesome. And what a great intro. I need to take you everywhere. It's like beautifully written. I'm like, I know some of the stuff. I'm like, wow, okay, that's awesome. Ringo Starr. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. My two co-hosts who sometimes can't make it because they're working, we always talk about whether or not we should do that in post-production, but the reactions, it's been great. So we just keep doing it, even though it's like, wow, that was a long intro, or, some of the stuff you can't find on your website. And the only way I knew it is by listening to you, on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So
no, that was fun. So it just proves you were listening.
Yeah, I was an active listener. Absolutely. So when we had Barbara on, speaking of Barbara Majeski from the Today Show, she talked about, and she did it again today on Clubhouse's Breakfast with Champions. So she talked about her Jewish heritage, and it was fascinating. And as I'm Jewish as well, and we both talked about how, despite the challenges we may have faced growing up, our tight-knit families and the Jewish traditions help guide us. And so, can you talk about your upbringing as a Latina Jewish woman? Because I'm fascinated by the various layers that you bring to the table, especially in this space.
Yeah. So I'm Juban, which is a Cuban Jew.
Are you allowed to say that?
Yeah.
Oh, you are a Jew. I've never heard that before. I feel like that if I said that or something, that's like
not derogatory. It's
really
like
a Jew.
How we
Wow.
identify.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think some people have called it like a Q Jew or something like that, but I like the term Juban, and people are like, what? They're Jews in Cuba?
Fascinating.
So my father's from Cuba, my mother's from Illinois, and my grandfather, my mother's father, was in the mob, so in the Jewish mob, and so ties go real deep there, but he used to box for Meyer Lansky, if you can believe it. So
wow,
crazy. Like, yeah, there are Jews in sports, right? So
yes, but boxing was a thing back in the day. Like, yeah, absolutely, especially for Jews. Yeah.
So my upbringing, I grew up in an Orthodox temple setting.
Wow.
So I still,
so for people that are listening, and when you go to temple, if you're Orthodox, the women sit separately from the men, right? So everything is separate.
Yeah. And it wasn't because we were so religious. It's just, when my parents were poor, they had no place to go to temple, and the Orthodox synagogue, or what we call the shul, was like, no, if you're Jewish, just come, don't worry about it. So my father never forgot that. And so as he made money, he would donate money to that temple. And so we would end up going there. And so that rabbi ended up becoming like a second father to me. So it was all I ever knew. And then I went to parochial school. I went to a Jewish day school through 8th grade, and then went to a non-sectarian school for high school. Went to high school in Israel, stayed in Israel for a few months. And then when I had the opportunity, were
you on a kibbutz?
I wasn't on kibbutz. There was a program called Alexander Muss High School in Israel. And so it was a 2.5 month program where high school students junior year or senior year could take a semester and go to Israel. You take your prerequisites, and then you also learn about living in Israel, what life in Israel is like, and the history. And so it was a quite profound experience and a very spiritual one. But when I got back from Israel, I wanted to do something to connect with my tie to Israel, which was I became very religious, and I was observant, and my family was not. And so, but at one point, I had the opportunity, and I had been working in TV as a journalist since, like an associate producer, whatever, since I was 14, working in TV news, local news. Then at college, I was working on the news campus, the TV news.
But what was the one thing when you went to Israel that made you want to go down a path of being more observant?
Yeah, I think that it was a tie to our heritage, to our history. And so for me, it was more of, I wanted to feel connected to Eretz Israel. And the only way that I would feel that way is if I was doing something that a lot of people that I knew were in Israel doing. And so it was a way for me to feel I knew I was never going to live there, but it was a way for me to feel like I was connected to them when I got back.
Wow.
And so with that, I became very religious. I was working for a production company that was doing Jewish educational documentaries. And I did a video called Windows to the Soul with the Rebbe Schneerson, who lived in New York. And there were videos I was doing, like Shabbat videos. And so I felt fulfilled there, but there was also this side of me that was very secular. And so I had the opportunity at 19 years old to direct a music video for Julio Iglesias. And, at the time, I wouldn't have the cojones to do what I did back then. But when I was 19, you're like, oh, sure, I could do this. So I found a DP who had worked on a lot of big music videos. And I said, if I get this video, you'll work with me on it and you'll help me through this. This will be my master's degree in cinematography or whatever. And so Julio Iglesias, finally, people were like, yes, he's never worked with a female director. Okay, great. I'm like, holy shit, I'm actually going to do this. And then the only time he wanted to do it was on Rosh Hashanah. And I was, I was like, oh, well, this is not God testing me, right? Like, this is not, here I am. I'm Shomer Shabbat, which is like, I'm a religious Jew. I am, eating only in kosher restaurants. I am,
Tell everybody what Rosh Hashanah is for people that don't know.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah is a Jewish New Year. It's one of the holiest days of the year. And so if you talk to most Jews that talk about their twice a year Jews, they go to temple on Rosh Hashanah. This is when they start being inscribed in the book of life. Like this is the full circle of the year of all the drama they've lived on their life. They've lied, they've stolen, they've done whatever they want. They want they want redemption. This is the period, the 10 days of repentance.
Yes.
And I am making the decision to direct a music video for Julio Iglesias. So, I decided, when am I ever going to get this opportunity again? I was really by myself in my religious pursuit. And so I was like, all right, screw it. So I did the video, and then I had worked with Celine Dion in Spanish. Like, the career kind of took off there, but there was always something pulling me spiritually, like guilting me, like, why are you doing this? And so that's kind of how the career took off.
How was it?
A big decision.
And you said that, that's amazing. And you said that he had never worked with a female producer.
No.
So how was it for you being young and naive in that space? Were you supported? Was there like chauvinistic kind of things going?
The Me Too movement hasn't caught up with the Hispanic music industry, nor has it really penetrated the Hispanic entertainment and U.S. Hispanic market. Better in the US side, but not much. And so it was bad. Julio at one point, had said things, done things, and people would laugh it off. And I'd be like, I'm going into overtime, let's go, and so there was just stuff on set that I think nowadays people would just be like, this should have been red flag for any young producer to be protected. But I didn't think about that. I was just like, let's keep it going. Let's just keep moving.
Wow. Yeah. I hear those stories a lot on here, whether it's regarding equality or social injustice. And a lot of those things obviously are still going on because we have misogynists, we have racists, we have, people that don't believe in safe spaces for all.
Yeah.
And so, man, props.
Yeah, you're even seeing it on an audio app. You're just like, what? How permeating is that? And then people feel like if their voice is heard, then they get canceled. It's just, when we live in a world where you can't speak up for fear of retaliation, it's like, okay, are we living in the Handmaid's Tale? It's not.
Yeah, that's a good call. And people like Dr. Malone are getting canceled on YouTube and media platforms for speaking the truth. To your point. Yeah. That's a whole nother level.
And the thing is, it's like, so people should be able to have their opinions. I think about all the great television shows that were created and produced that would never be greenlit today. And you're just like, you know, you
All in the family? Are you
all
kidding me?
ever, never,
Oh my
never.
God.
It's true. It's true.
Deli is sponsored by Moolah Kicks. Moolah is Moolah, like money, moolah, and kicks like shoes, one word. You can find them online at moolahkicks.com, and it's the first ever female-only brand basketball shoe. So it's a shout out to the basketball street culture, and it is also about fighting social injustice and gender inequality worldwide and here in the United States. And again, you can find them at moolahkicks.com. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli. So, where did you go to college?
I went to University of Miami.
Wow.
I'm a hurricane. Yeah.
Interesting. Did you get a graduate degree or did you just do your
I did
undergrad?
not.
Oh, wow.
I did not. My husband got his degrees from University of Chicago, and he got his graduate and PhD from University of Chicago. And I went to his alma mater for his alumni weekend, and I was on campus, and I'm like, this is a totally different college experience than I had.
God.
So then he went with me to a reunion weekend, and this girl's walking her little dog in a hot pink neon bikini with like spiked heels to the pool. And he's like, what is going on? He's like, I obviously chose wrong.
Nothing like the U. Wait, you must have been at the U when like football was a thing.
I graduated in 92.
Yes.
3 years. We were national champions. No question.
Oh my
I was
God.
actually on set. If you know Steve Edwards from Good Day LA. So
Yep.
I walked on set because I was promoting the book, and he's like, Stephanie, the U, and it didn't click. And he's like, the Ring Theater, and like all these things. And so everybody on set is like, you know, oh, here he goes with the University of Miami. And so it was like one of those things that, you know, just when you are a UM alum, it's like, it sticks with you for life.
Oh man, I can't imagine I mean, used to visit
It was
Miami, the Rascal House. I remember going to the Rascal
Yes.
House with my great grandmother. Yes, Pumpernickel. But there was this one guy that worked in there. He was the busboy, and I'll never forget him. He would clear tables in a way that I've never seen someone clear tables, and took so much pride in it. It was so inspiring that I swear to God, I've never forgotten it. Every time I went in there, I would just watch him and just be like, look at him clear. He had a system. Like, it was fascinating.
See, and for your audience who don't know, I mean, Pumpernicks and Wolfies and Rascal House, it's like, so you know, all the Altacockers, all the Jews that would go in there, it's like you put on the table, like for those of you who haven't experienced a real like New York deli or Miami Beach deli, it's like all the pickles and the coleslaw and the bread on the table. Like I would take friends there who weren't Jewish, and they were like, well, this is your meal. And I'm like, no, this is what goes in the purses and the bags of the to-go before they even eat.
Oh,
So
that's
funny.
fascinating. That is hilarious. Oh my goodness. So wow, must have been a fascinating experience. So you went to football games, you did all the sporting things, and
I didn't go to all the sporting events, but you know, you can't help it. But you know, here I am living in Chicago now almost 14 years, and UM was playing Notre Dame, and one of my anesthesiologists, you know, is huge Notre Dame. So she's like, you know, she's Nicole Higgins. So she's like, all right, we're going to the game. I said, UM's going to take you down. And I haven't followed a UM game in like
you know
years.
nothing.
And so I'm like right in the mindset of like 1980s, early 90s, you know, UM. And I'm like, oh, we're going to take you down. Like, so I get to the game, and it was a complete blowout. And she's like, about that. And I'm like, ignore me. But, you know, we were good at one point.
Yeah, at one point. Exactly. Oh man, that's amazing. So you lead this sort of first life if you break your life into chapters. And so I sort of look at your life like I looked at Barbara's as sort of 3 different lives. Yeah. And so you go into your professional life, and you briefly talked about it. And so, but I know that you had said that you had premonitions when you were younger, but you didn't really know what they were. And so can you touch on when your earliest memory of those were, and now looking back on it, like what happened with those? Or sponsored by PSK. You can find them online at lids.com, pskcollective.com, tjmax.com, Walmart.com, and now Kohl's department store at Kohls.com. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the
My
sports.
earliest memory was my grandmother. So I was 10 years old, and my parents and I were in Las Vegas. That we would go there every New Year's.
Mhm.
And my grandmother lived in Miami, and my grandparents lived in Miami, the one from Cuba. And so closer to midnight, Nevada time, I feel my chest close and I feel an instant thought of my grandmother. And I said, have you checked on Abuela? And he is like, no, it's late, because it was like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that for her time, but I'll call her tomorrow. And that was the moment that she had her fatal heart attack.
Oh.
And it's interesting because my dad told me years later that before he left for that trip, she kept hugging him and kept saying, tell your mother you love her, and just come here and just spend some time with me. So it was almost like she knew. And if anyone were to tell you that this intuitive self is hereditary or genetic, I would say that it came from her, because she was definitely more santera. Like she had this witchy side to her in Cuba. She always believed in extrasensory and had this kind of extrasensory perception. And she would feel things. And my father would be like, she would see and feel things. And we just thought it was Ma being crazy. But until it showed up in droves with me later, my father was like, I didn't realize how difficult it must have been for her. So that was one of the first experiences. And the next time, I think it was in college, and I was hugging my uncle who I would see every Rosh Hashanah. And, when I hugged him, I had an overwhelming sadness. This was the last time I was going to see him. And 2 days later, he died. And so he was healthy. He was running 5 miles a day. This wasn't, there weren't any signs, but none that I knew of. And so
you weren't at the point where you say anything yet.
No, I wasn't. I did with my grandmother. And when my uncle passed, I did talk to my Orthodox rabbi, and his wife is Cuban. The Rebbetzin was Cuban. And so she's like, there's something in Kabbalah that talks about this, but you cannot study it. And it's very, like, he put the fear of God in me. He's like, I won't study it. I opened the Zohar once and it scared the heck out of me. And so I was like, all right, but because the Rebbetzin was also Cuban, she not only had the strong faith in God, but had the ability to feel these things and understood, because the Hispanic culture leans more into spirituality than the general market. And so I think that was, I had a place to release some of what I was feeling, but it wasn't like I had direction on how to deal with it. So I thought I was willing it to happen, like manifesting it. So I just shut it down until it came down to my own foreboding that I couldn't stop.
Wow, that's a long time in between.
Yeah.
So when you say you shut it down, you didn't sense anything else between?
No, I did sense things, but there were things like, if somebody was sexually abused, or like I had no filter. So I would say things like, oh my God, are you okay? And then I would see the look of horror, and I was like, this is not doing anybody any good, And so I'm like, well, so I was like, I do not want to see any of these things. And so I made it a point to just shut up. And so when you make a solid decision to be like, I do not want to see it, it's not like it just goes away completely. It's just you let the other noise come in and you just get distracted.
You're in the forest, but you're not seeing the trees at this point.
That's correct.
Wow. Yeah. So I have to be transparent. I'm a firm believer of spirits, and I've seen a lot of signs since my late stepfather passed away over 20 years ago in 1999. I mean, the signs have been too many to ignore. Whether you always have believed in this stuff, or all of a sudden some things happen in your life and you're like, okay, you can't really ignore that. And so it's been birds, mostly feathers, colors of the birds, the color red, birds sitting on the neighbor's yard that, like, I'm talking like hawks, birds that never come into this neighborhood, ducks that go into the pool. I mean, things that just never happened before.
Yeah.
And so, I do want to ask you, like, how now, sort of in your third life, how you help people navigate these spaces that you ignored for so long.
I feel like my calling isn't really to proselytize about spirituality or religion, and I don't feel like it is to force feed people to
Right.
believe in something if they're on the fence about it. I really feel like
You educate.
I do, but so where I actually lead from, even though I've had the near-death experience, even though I do see spirits, even though I continue to have premonitions and they're kind of crazy, I document everything because I just want to know that I'm not crazy, more so than just, hey, I'm right, but what I do is I tell people that we all have intuition, whether you believe it comes from a spiritual place or whether we are hardwired this way and there's a scientific explanation. It does not matter as long as you have faith in yourself and believe that what is happening to you is real, because ultimately it can literally save your life and those around you. So the education part of it is to explain what a premonition feels like versus what anxiety or what a casual thought is, for the clinicians, the healthcare workers, to listen to patients differently. Just because they think that, it doesn't add up with the data doesn't mean it couldn't happen.
Scientific. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know medicine is going down a certain path where they're not really worried too much about the outliers. They're looking at the data, getting their checks and balances and moving forward. And I am a living example that the checks and balances didn't add up, even though it did on paper. It did. The patient was already giving you the diagnosis. Now, I'm also smart enough to know that it's not like they were going to go out of their way to prepare for a hysterectomy before I actually needed one. But what they were missing is that I had had a baby before. I had had a C-section before. I work and thrive really well under pressure. I'm not a histrionic, neurotic human being. And this is not typical behavior of their patient. And so maybe listening a little differently would have given me a sense of calm going into the OR, that I had been heard, because I did not know I was ultimately heard.
So for people that haven't read your book, or haven't gone on your website and don't really know what in God's name we're talking about.
Yeah.
Can you share with everyone?
Yeah.
I know you've shared it a lot, but it can't be overstated enough how there's more out there and we just don't know everything.
For the record, I do believe that there's more out there. I do believe that life exists when we physically stop. I do believe that a patient can see and hear you when they're in a coma, that consciousness exists outside of the body. And the reason that I believe all these things is because of what happened. So I was pregnant with our second child, and the first one, I had no complications other than the fact that she was just too big. So I had a C-section. Wasn't a problem. I was back at work 8 days later. It wasn't a big shift in anything. But at the 20-week ultrasound with our son, I was diagnosed with a placenta previa, which is basically the placenta growing on top of the cervix. And in most cases, as the belly grows, as the uterus grows, the placenta will move out of the way, and there's no harm, no foul. And what they kept saying was the worst case scenario is I'd have a C-section. Well, I've had one before. Okay. And like I said, my husband's a PhD from University of Chicago. He's an economist. He testifies as an expert witness. He was a former Air Force pilot. So for him, the data that is given to him about my situation is pretty much a non-issue. I'm having prenatal care. I'm delivering at Northwestern Memorial Hospital Prentice. They deliver 12,000 babies a year. I'm having plenty of care, right? I'm taking care of myself. But in the moment that I was diagnosed with that, I had a very deep knowing, and what I call, what many call intuitive moments, I call a knowing. You don't know how you know, you just do. Every single one of us has had these experiences, whether you are driving someplace and you make a decision to go left instead of right, or you're about to go out with somebody, or you meet somebody, and you're like, something's off. You don't know why this is off, but you just need to learn how to trust it, which has become my mission in helping people trust it more. So, what does one do who feels something? You start Dr. Googling it. So I'm like, okay, what's a placenta previa? What happens? What are the complications? And at some point through my research, I read that a placenta previa can turn into an accreta, which is what Kim Kardashian had, where the placenta merges with the uterus. If that happens, you might need a hysterectomy. If that happens, you might hemorrhage. And if that happens, you and the baby could lose your life. And I sat back and I looked at my husband and I said, this is going to happen to us. The only difference is the baby's going to be fine. And the visions were so detailed. Like, as I was reading the words, I saw it unfolding in my mind's eye. Like, okay, I'm going to be cut from sternum to pelvis. I'm going to be intubated. I'm going to be under general anesthesia. I'm like, it was just a download of information in a split second. And again, it was this knowing. I didn't question where I got this information. I didn't question whether I manifested it. I didn't question whether God spoke to me. I didn't question whether this was something energetic. I was like, it was go time, and I had to do anything I could to save my life. And
your husband looked at you sideways.
Oh, completely. Like, he was like, what you're afraid of is never going to happen. First of all, where you are in a teaching hospital, they're prepared with emergency drills. You need to relax.
Oh God, I want to ask this question right now, but I'm going to wait to ask.
Go ahead.
No, I got to wait, because if I ask now, it's gonna be out of order. So keep going, okay. And then
So no, if you saw me on the Today Show with the interview, Megyn Kelly said, and she was married to an anesthesiologist. She's like, you don't have to take her word for it. She spoke to everyone. And I did. I spoke to every doctor, every nurse.
Right.
I spoke to, if you saw me in Starbucks and you were like, oh, how's the pregnancy going? I'd be like, I'm going to die. I was so matter of fact about it. Friends stayed away from me. Jonathan thought there was something wrong with the baby. I had ultrasounds. I actually sought out the head of obstetric, a gynecological oncologist, because I had learned that, if I needed a hysterectomy during a procedure, the OB would have to transfer it to maternal fetal medicine, but a gynonc would be one who does mostly high risk surgeries with reproductive organs. And so that's who you want to do it. So making a point, I had MRIs, every test came back negative. And my husband said, you should feel better. And I said, I feel worse, because I'm running out of people to tell this crazy foreboding story to. So I took to Facebook. I posted on Facebook, if anybody has my blood type, I'm going to need it. Not because I knew people were going to donate blood, but because maybe somebody would have heard, oh, my cousin had this and it ended up being cancer or whatever. Then it gives me some task to do to try and figure out why I'm feeling this way. I wrote goodbye letters. I sent out goodbye letters. I told people exactly what was going to happen in 2 months' time. And then ultimately I had a final consultation with anesthesia, which I didn't have with my first, but what I didn't know, and for your audience to know, is like the anesthesiologist is there to keep you alive in the OR. And they are, when you say something about things, they are the ones that have a flag in their head of like what could go wrong.
Allergies or anything else.
Yeah. So I had a consultation with Dr. Grace Lim, as you mentioned her early on. And she, tried to calm me down. She said, you're in a teaching hospital. We're prepared for certain things, but, I hope I made you feel better. And I didn't know anything was done other than the fact that she was just listening to me give the spiel that I was giving the last 3 months. So it wasn't anything abnormal. It was just like, okay, here's the last ditch effort. And so at 36 weeks to the day, I was supposed to have a mandatory C-section at 37 weeks, but at 36 weeks to the day, I bleed all over the kitchen floor. I get to the hospital. Jonathan, my husband, is in New York. And I'm ready to deliver this baby. And
were you freaking out because you knew what you knew? Sports Deli is sponsored by SportRx, the leader in sport prescription eyewear. You can find them online at sportrx.com, and don't forget to enter the code DELI10 at checkout for your special 10% discount. And now back to this incredible interview right here on the Sports Deli.
Yeah, I was freaking out because I was trying, I'm Skype chatting with him and I'm writing down these things to him in these loving messages, trying to make him understand that these are the last words he's going to read from me. Like whatever I write here, he's going to read over and over again. And I'm also, I have my 2-year-old there and I'm trying not to cry to scare her. And, and if anybody is understanding like that kind of pressure, it was palpable because I knew the day that I would give birth, I didn't know which day I'd give birth, but the day that I give birth was the day I was going to die. And it was the fear was so palpable that, it's almost like when you're being buried alive, and I've never been buried alive, but you can imagine it. Yeah. You're being buried alive and they're putting dirt on top of you and you have your last few breaths to grab because you've got to hold on to breathe however much you can breathe before you know you're going to die. That was the feeling that it was. I get wheeled down to the operating room. I try one more time. I tell my doctor, there's something wrong. You need to put me under general anesthesia. And she's like, Stephanie, I'm not going to do that. It's going to knock out the baby. And I know you're nervous. Jonathan's not here, but we're going to take care of you.
Was that Grace at this point?
No, this was Dr. Levitt. So the one you saw on the Netflix show. And so they wheel me into the OR. And if you know anything about delivery, you're having a C-section. So you have an epidural in, your arms are in a T. They put a curtain in front of your face. So you're not going to see the incisions or anything. And it's not like I could run away from this. I was being wheeled into the room to give life to my son. And it was also the same room that was going to take mine. And so you're in this state of like, you're catatonic, like the fear is so palpable. And so by the time, they delivered Jacob, apparently they said that they were talking to me, but I didn't hear anything. I think that if you believe in being scared out of your body, I think that that's exactly what happened because I didn't answer them. They delivered Jacob, healthy, happy, everything's fine with him. And then seconds later, I'm dead. Past the pickles.
Past the pickles. Jesus Christ. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And so Grace took notice.
Yeah. So, I ended up, like you said, I had an amniotic fluid embolism, which is a very rare pregnancy complication. It's a 1 in 40,000 risk. Most doctors will never see it in their lifetime. You'll read about it in textbooks. It's basically where amniotic cells get into the mother's bloodstream. And if you happen to be allergic to it, your body goes into anaphylactic shock. And in most cases, you don't make it. So the first phase is cardiac arrest, lungs collapse, everything. And so I was lucky enough to have a crash cart there, be intubated, and only had flatline for 37 seconds. And once you're back up, that's when the second phase starts, which is DIC, which is the body's inability to clot blood, which anesthesiologists have thoughtfully created an acronym called death is coming. So your body has 20 units of blood normally. I'm O negative, which was also a fear of mine.
That's not universal. O positive is universal.
It's a universal donor, but I can only receive O negative.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I was given 60 units of blood and blood product to save my life. And there were a couple of things in the OR I didn't predict. And that was, there was a crash cart and there was extra blood waiting for me. And it turned out that Dr. Grace Lim, felt uncomfortable. She told me later, she felt uncomfortable with our conversation. She said she had never had a patient speak so clearly about what was going to happen, had a baby before, had a C-section.
Who had no medical experience. Like you didn't know this field or this space at all.
And had sought out specialists to save her life. And with that one phone call, she's the one that flagged my file, incorporating those extra measures in the operating room. And that's why I'm alive today.
Oh, unbelievable. So now I got to ask the question. Deli is sponsored by City Lokes, CITYLOCS. You can find them online at citylokes.com, where you can go and make your own personalized license plate hats. They're so cool. You got to check them out. And don't forget to enter the code TheSportsDeli at checkout for your special 10% discount. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli. What did your husband say after the fact when once you got past that, period?
So I had him write a chapter in the book that he just didn't want to write. And because you're an audiobook fan, he had to voice it. The audiobook was very, very difficult, more than anything else. And I just did the audiobook in January. So so he says he didn't think twice about certain things, but we haven't unwrapped all of it, but I'm giving him the time to take layer by layer at a time, because I still believe, as strong a man as he is and as solid as he is, we all react to trauma differently. And in his mind, he, post everything, he's happy we dodged a bullet. But the reality is the bullet hit me dead on. I survived the bullet. And it's that kind of switch in thinking that has been painful. But what he did was, as soon as he got to the hospital, he had texted the doctor, and the doctor was like, how's everything? And the doctor's like, the baby's fine and Stephanie's stable. And he's smart enough to know that's not good. And so he got to the 8th floor delivery. My doctor, Julie Levitt, had blood all over her scrubs. And she said, there were some complications. I'm going to sit you in the consultation room. The anesthesiologist will be here. And Dr. Higgins, the one that actually did the resuscitation and the crash cart, she sat with Jonathan. She explained what had happened. And then
he must have been freaking the fuck out.
But he will tell you he went into autopilot mode. So
he's a numbers guy. So he can go and be a process person in that moment.
And interestingly enough, anesthesiologists say, anesthesiologists and pilots think the same way. So they appreciated the fact that he was not emotional, that he was very much focused on what's morbidity, mortality. What do we need to do? What does she need? Where do we go on this stage? So that makes their job a little easier. But he did tell her, if she needs a hysterectomy, this is the doctor we met with 2 months before. And she thought that was odd. Said, she said, I remember her telling me later that she's like, I thought it was odd, but you wouldn't have survived another surgery. Plus we thought you were stable. So they had stabilized the bleed and they put me into the surgical ICU. And that's kind of where you see all I only have a few photos from that because Jonathan took those photos. And that's how he found me, was exactly like that. Was the next time he saw me. And so he's sitting with the machines breathing for me. You're hearing everything. Interestingly enough, the life support machine that I was on was the number 18, which in the Jewish religion is life. It's high,
Unbelievable.
But I didn't see the number on the machine until years later. It's like a friend of mine was like, did you take a look at your life support machine? And it was like a random numbered unit. Right. And so I believe in all the signs, but it's just very interesting. And so I think after 7 hours of him listening to the machines, they realized that the bleed was still happening, and they called in the doctor, the gynonc that I had met with 2 months before, who performed the hysterectomy. The pathology on the uterus showed that an accreta had started to form, but the MRI didn't pick it up when it picked it up. And yeah, everything happened the way I said it was going to happen.
And what did you see when you were dead? Because that part is interesting to me as well.
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable. You didn't just see the white light, right? You saw what was going on in there.
It's so interesting because you're Jewish. It's really interesting to have the conversation with you because, so I didn't I was on the Steve Harvey show, and Steve said, "Did you see the light?" And I said, "I don't know, man. They gave me a lot of drugs. I didn't, I wasn't afraid to say I didn't. But what you don't see on the Netflix stuff is all the details that you read about in the book. But when I went back in using hypnotherapy, I was able to pick up everything that happened prior, during, and after. And so everything I'm telling you is post, but it was verified and validated afterwards. So I had seen, when I had flatlined, hundreds of spirits. I didn't see God. I saw a triangle of light, which I don't talk about. And I was having this conversation with this rabbi last night, because he is a near-death experiencer. And he was like, well, why it was a triangle. And I'm like, well, if I'm not Jewish, I would say Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then, the Jewish perspective is like, is it Israelites, Levites, and Kohanim, or is it, or is it the upside down triangles in the Star of David, and what that means. And
wow.
So I'm still looking at that. I don't know whether I'll ever be able to prove any of it, but it's kind of comforting knowing that some people have heard some of that information. And then, but the interesting thing is, when I've read articles about people who've been traumatized or have gone through near-death experiences in Psychology Today, there were articles about how it's wishful thinking that your loved ones are there, right? It's like, okay, of course you want your loved ones to welcome you in your death-defying, experiences, or your close death experience. And so, I said, okay, we'll put a pin in that one. But it's the ones I did not know that had messages for the ones that I do know here in this living earth that caught me by surprise, seeing Jonathan's father, who had passed in 1998, who I didn't know, or my best friend's little brother, who was 7 at the time of his death. And so it was just those kind of things that kind of threw me for a loop and making me realize that there's just more to this than just wishful thinking.
That is amazing. Have you had anything since?
Yeah.
Oh boy. So do you reach out now to change the course of someone's path?
So it's interesting. So the podcast that I'm launching is called Knowing, right? And I'm hearing stories from people who've had experiences that they've witnessed, they've inserted themselves into the narrative. They didn't, dreams that they've had, just to show that it's out there. This isn't just my story. A lot of people had these stories. And this one guy in my pilot episode, has made the decision afterwards that he is no longer going to insert himself into the narrative because he feels that he's interfering with other people's karma. And I respectfully disagreed with him. I said, you might not be able to change the outcome, but given the information, maybe it prepares the person differently than if it comes out of left field, right? There is a woman who told me a story about a dream that she had, and it involved her cousin, and the details are unimportant, but she had told the cousin that he was going to be killed a certain way. And he's like, what are you, a psychic now? And I never go here and I never do this, whatever. So she felt foolish, but it stayed with her. It haunted her. So she had told him. And then, 2 years later, it happened exactly the way she said it would. And I said to her, oh my God, I'm like, what, like in shock. And she's like, Stephanie, but I realized that the premonition wasn't for him. He's like a brother to me. And so when I had that vision and I told him about it, I had mourned the loss and the shock the first time I had the vision. So 2 years later, when it happened, it wasn't a surprise.
Interesting.
And so do I believe that you can change outcome? Well, Jonathan and I argue a lot about predetermination and free will. I do believe everybody has an expiration date. And I'm not messing with that. The thing is that Northwestern at the time had only had 10 AFEs, amniotic fluid embolisms, in their history. 6 did not make it, and the other 3 are in permanent vegetative states. So maybe I was never going to expire at that time, but how well I survived was due to my free will. So I don't I don't think they're on the same path. I feel like they are on different paths. I think your expiration date is your expiration date, and how you get there, where you meander is your free will to take a left or a right, but you're still going to expire on this day. Doesn't make a difference. That day is your day that you're not going to get out of.
But isn't it the same if somebody read something in a book and a light clicked, or a light went on, or if they got information from a person, that had a premonition, and then you're just planting the seed. It's up to that person as to whether or not they want to do something about it.
Maybe, but if their expiration is their expiration, it's like you are giving certain insider information. Now that, maybe that you were planted in their karmic path in order to help them avoid a rough patch where they didn't need to go, but their expiration might still be in June, but your information you gave them in February is going to help them not be completely a vegetable until June when they expire. So that's the way I look at it. If I'm given information, like you asked, yes, the premonitions keep coming, but what I do now, especially when it comes to family and close friends, I soften the blow a little bit. I don't just come out where I used to be like, oh, you need your blood checked and check that, like that. I don't. What I do now is, like, we were in Israel for my daughter's bat mitzvah, and, we were walking through a park to get to our hotel in Tel Aviv. And I had an overwhelming feeling that a drug deal was gone and it was going to go bad. And so instead of waiting for it to happen, I said to my husband, I feel like this is happening on the far right corner of this park. So just be alert and let's just get through and keep our eye on the prize to get out of the park. And because we were alert and aware, nothing happened. Now, does that mean the drug deal ever happened or didn't happen? I don't know. But do I need to turn around and prove that it was going to happen? And if the only thing I did was stay on alert, I think it's worth it to be a little more vigilant when you have those feelings.
Oh man, I could talk about this for hours. So talk about Netflix and the book and the differences between, what people are to expect, if they're watching Netflix versus, obviously books are always more detailed, right?
Yeah, it's much more detailed, and you get more history and all of the signs and everything, like you love so much, kind of like all of it just comes together and you're like, holy shit. And for Jonathan, it's definitely his journey too, even though he's like, oh, it's your book, but you'll see, like, it took a long time. I mean, I think the book was due like in 2 weeks, and Jonathan refused to write this chapter. And I was like, I need this chapter. And he's like, hey, this is your book. I don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, I can't talk about when I was in a coma and everybody wants to know, what the hell were you thinking now that everything came to fruition? And so it took him a long time, but then ultimately when he wrote it, I understood why it took so long. It's incredibly raw and painful.
And like you said, everybody grieves differently.
They do. And I have to give him, I have to give him props for doing it in his way. I mean, when I speak at medical conferences, I asked him to speak at a national conference with like 3,000 nurses. And he's like, they don't want to hear from me. I said, I think they do. And so he got up and he spoke from the patient's family perspective of what they did to support the family. And it was invaluable. I mean, they cry to this day when people see it or speak about it. It's like, they never get that perspective. And even from the Netflix series, if you watch the entire series, there's nobody on there that their loved one is right next to them talking about the story, which I thought was odd. I was like, this is a journey we were on together. And everybody that's had these kind of profound experiences, their loved one is affected by it. And so that's one thing you'll get from Netflix that you won't get from because he doesn't do interviews. And so that's the only time he actually agreed to do a 2-shot. And then that's when the press called me a sleeper star, because every time he was saying something in his analytical way, I was like, are you really like rolling my eyes, like really, you're going to call that a coincidence? That's not a coincidence. I was the one that's saying, I don't believe in coincidences.
Right.
That is statistically impossible.
Right. I was going to say it had to be a numbers thing.
It was painful. It's still to this day. Like I was explaining to, we were at my daughter's field hockey game. I'm just sitting randomly next to a guy who ended up, his father sits on the board of University of Miami and was sitting having lunch with his best friend from camp. This guy is 82 years old. His best friend from camp is my grandmother's brother's son.
Oh my gosh.
And I said to Jonathan, I said, you call that not a coincidence? And he is like, yep. Just a random thing. I said, you're an idiot, but you know, it's hard.
Tell everybody about the bikini contest, because I want to hear about that before we get to the rapid fire, because I think because you sent me a picture of both you being intubated and in the hospital, one of those couple of pictures that your husband took, and then right next to it was you in this contest, and oh man, what an inspiration.
Thank you. No, it was I was tired of hearing myself complain. There was no way I was going under the knife to do a mommy makeover. I have massive scarring, you know, down the center of my abdomen. It keloided and it herniated. So I had to have mesh put into my stomach. So there were so many surgeries there, and no plastic surgeon would even touch it in case I would lose blood supply to my belly button.
Right.
So I was living with this, like, just a hysterectomy. So I had my choice taken away from me. Even though I might not have wanted more children, I didn't have the option.
Mm-hmm.
I had my body just scarred up, and I grew up in Miami. So for, you know, growing up in Miami where the clothes are like nothing, you know, I lost all of that kind of sexiness in my mind. Now, my husband didn't feel that way. My husband's like, if I had all those scars, you would still think I was hot and sexy and everything. I said, yes, but it's different for a woman who is just like all chopped up. So I was tired of hearing myself complain. And so then we get back from a trip, and I said, you know what? I'm a total immersion kind of person, but a short term total immersion. I'm not an athlete. I'm not someone who likes group sports. I don't even like step classes. Like, I'm not coordinated. I am creative, but with ADHD, right? So it's like, as you could tell from this conversation, right? So
that makes two of us.
Right. And I learned this later in life, right? So I was doing my research, and it was like this whole bikini bodybuilding competition was like 16 weeks, right? I'm like, okay, I can do anything for 16 weeks, but you have to have a goal, right? And, you know, whenever I worked on a TV show or I ever did anything, there was a goal. There's a beginning, there's prep, pre-production, production, and post. And I looked at this as like a 3 to 4 month kind of commitment. And I said, no matter what, it's going to be better than where I am today if I do something consistently, right? So I found a professional like IFBB Pro. She took one look at me and she said, you work out? And I was like, I do. She's like, with weights? And I'm like, fuck you. And so, and then I had a premonition about her, and I started like vomiting everything. And that woman, who is like a beast, like she is an IFBB Pro, but physique. So she is a big, like, beast of a woman. Yeah. She was crying in a puddle in front of me because of everything I saw. Her mother had passed. I saw her mother. I had all these messages that came through the floodgates. And so she's like, all right, I guess we're stuck with each other. Right. So, so I'm glad I didn't know all the details about everything I needed to do. She's like, let's take it week by week.
Right. Oh man.
But I started to see, like, after 3 weeks where I was headed, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to get a little bit of muscle and then growing. And I couldn't do the things that most competitors do, which is I couldn't dehydrate because I had kidney failure. So I couldn't take certain supplements. And for any of you that know about what, like, some of these bodybuilding competitions are, like, the supplements and what you're doing to pull out water, I'm like, I can't do that. You know, I'm not going to take a chance with my kidneys falling offline. So, so I went in it with an open heart. I had zero intention on getting on a stage. I couldn't even, I mean, I had no equilibrium or stability in my stomach and my
Right.
abdomen. So,
Your
and
core.
so,
Yeah.
so my core was like, I mean, it was completely severed from the rest of my body, energetically, physically. I had diastasis, like I had all of these things, and the abdomen, which is the last to come in when you're doing anything like this. So that was the bane of my existence, because I kept, no matter everything else around me was growing beautifully, perfectly, the abdomen was still, I was like, it's not there. But then as I got closer and closer, she's like, you're getting on that stage. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And then Jonathan was like, honey, I want you to get on the stage. And I'm like, you just want me in the stripper heels and very bikini. And then I felt strong enough that I'm like, you know what? I'm inspiring myself. I'm like, and I was 48 when I did it. And I was like, for the women that are sitting there saying they can't afford plastic surgery, or they need to have it in order to get their body back in shape. I'm like, you know what? I'm walking the walk. I'm going to present it and be like, you can, it wasn't about any trophies. It wasn't about any win. It wasn't about competition. It was about like, holy shit, look at where I went from and look at where I am. And I took home second place in my category, and then top 5. That was the crazy thing. I was 5th in the top 5, but I was against 20-year-olds and girls.
Unbelievable.
Certain steroids and dehydrating. And I was just like, well, this is what you got. So yeah.
Oh man, that is a version of the sports deli that we have not had before. That is unbelievable. Fascinating. Oh my goodness. What a great story. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, you look, and what they don't tell you is you look great, but you don't smell great. Like, I don't know that's from all the protein, right? Because I was just like, this is disgusting. Jonathan's like, I want to have sex with you, but you don't smell great. So it's like, if you don't have a pizza, I'm not interested in sex with you.
This is this type of stuff that Jubins typically do not talk about publicly, for the record.
They don't. They don't. The dimgar,
Oh man, all right, let's get to the rapid fire. Your time is incredibly valuable. If that's okay, we got some.
Sure.
Okay, what's next on your bucket list?
To get the movie out. I finished the screenplay for the 39th time, and I'm just now on. I have Hawk Koch, who is the president of the Academy Awards, optioned the rights. I have a second producer on there who teaches screenwriting at USC. So they're mentoring me to get this done and get it out into the world however it's going to be out there.
Oh, it's going to be so well received. Is it going to be in LA, the premiere on the red carpet? Man, that would be amazing. Wow.
I have no idea. Who knows where
I want you to go in a bikini.
Yeah. Who knows where the world is going, but
really?
I had told them because I had written an original screenplay that they were like, this is good, but it's a Lifetime movie. And I said, I'm okay with Lifetime. My audience is like, it's no problem. And they were like, no, we're looking at taking the spirit. So as I started writing it, I've been fortunate to have really incredible mentors in my life that really believe and want this story to get out there, because I do feel it will help so many. And I think when it's in the movies, people will take note to it, then more people will have the story or the book. And then they can it'll help them listen to their intuition a little differently, where they can have some crazy foreboding story to point to and say, I felt this before, because those are the kind of emails that I get. And so the more that we talk about this, the more, and that's why I do the Clubhouse once a week. I want to have like-minded individuals there to share their stories, to know that there's a safe space for them to not be judged over the fact that they believe in things that they can't see. And some of those things can kill you. So, yeah.
It reminds me of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, where people were inspired and you just couldn't help but believe there's too many of the stories. And when we're living in a time of so much division, this type of thing is so important for people to have hope. More people are depressed. You just don't know the extension, the extrapolation of where this might be able to go for people. So that's just amazing. Hopefully sooner than later. So speaking of movies, what's your favorite movie of all time?
Wow. That is hard. I loved movies from
Of course you did.
Dead Poet Society. I loved
We could talk about Robin Williams too. Talk about
yeah,
mental health.
mental health is I mean, Citizen Kane.
Yes.
I mean,
Wow.
there are movies that affect.
Were you like a James Bond person back in the day, or did you like?
I know I like
Superman.
James Bond.
Yeah.
No, I was never into the Marvel stuff or the big
Star Wars. No.
No, I mean, I watched them because Jacob now, who's now 8,
Right.
he's fascinated with Star Wars. So watching them again, it's really,
Wow.
really cool to see. And what's interesting is that I'm seeing the messages in them now writing a screenplay because, Star Wars was all about light and dark, right? It was the white
good
light
versus evil. Yeah.
It really is, but when you're looking at Darth Vader and you're looking at was it not Han Solo,
Luke Skywalker.
thank you, that the lightsabers were these different colors, and it was finding the light, and they were talking about what is the source. And when you're and I'm like, oh my God, they're talking about this is what I live in my life. And so that has been inspirational in creating messages. It's really, really amazing. So I start thinking, oh, maybe George Lucas had a near-death experience, or maybe he's experienced some things where these things come from. But it is fascinating how you see the world differently.
Yeah. In your third life. Favorite TV show growing up?
I loved All in the Family.
Oh my gosh.
I liked Facts of Life.
Oh, that's right.
But I mean, I met Carol O'Connor in Vegas the year that my grandmother died.
Wow.
And so.
And he's nothing like the character.
No,
Yeah.
he was very nice. I mean,
he's a good guy. Yeah.
Yeah. He drank, he still smoked cigars and everything, but Vegas, he was just like walking around like he was just the average Joe.
Wow.
But really, things like Love Boat, things like just
Fantasy Island, right?
Yeah. And now you see all the remakes, and you're like, like the plane. I had Jake. I think Jacob was like 1 in the stroller, and he looked up. He's like, the plane, and I'm like, the plane.
That's classic. Eva Longoria or Jennifer Lopez?
Eva Longoria, 100%.
Not a Jennifer Lopez fan, especially after her recent breakup. Wow. George Lopez or
inside information. What?
Yeah, right. George Lopez or Antonio Banderas?
Banderas.
Yeah, of course. I don't know. We'll make sure your husband doesn't listen to that part.
No, he doesn't. He's like,
fine. Yeah, okay.
When I asked him one time, I'm like, he's like, if we were playing that game of a hall pass, I was like, I was like, who would yours be? He's like,
Wow.
And so he was like, I think he said Michelle Pfeiffer and Megyn Kelly or something at the time. I said, oh, okay. I said, you'll meet Megyn Kelly one day. And then he did. And then he had nothing to say to her. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm like, I'm like, if you're going to go there, at least really go there. Like, don't be all friends. But then for me, he was like, well, who for you? I said, Barry Manilow. And he's
really?
Like, he's like, okay. I was like, look,
of course he's fine with Barry Manilow.
I said, just because you think he's gay and the world thinks he's gay, this is before he came out and, officially, I was like, you haven't been in his bedroom. You don't know.
in that accent, right?
Yeah.
That's classic. Favorite meal to cook for your family?
Brisket, potatoes, rice.
Ooh,
challah.
Steak and potatoes. Challah.
Yeah.
Have you had, so the next question, which I wasn't going to ask in this order, but since you brought it up, French toast, pancakes, or waffles?
Oh, challah French toast.
There you go. All right. So that was easy. Vacuuming, laundry, or dishes? None of the above.
Am I supposed to put them in an order of
which one do you prefer? Vacuuming, dishes, or laundry?
None.
Okay, got it. Okay. Popcorn or candy at the movies?
Both.
None of those are therapeutic to you? I need to go back to that question for a second. Really?
None of that. You know what? In the pandemic, I was constantly mopping and vacuuming, and I hated everybody. I was like, you know what? I worked really, really hard my whole life because I was like singularly focused. Like I want a housekeeper once a week. I'm like, I do
Right.
not want, like, I will work as hard at, I'll take one less meal. I'll do whatever it is I need to do because I cannot clean like that. No, it's not. The only thing that's therapeutic is like purging, like, organizing and
Yeah,
purging.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Favorite musical artist of all time?
How can I do? I love the Grateful Dead.
Wow. Barry Manilow and the Grateful Dead. I
You
never
didn't
would have
expect
expected
that. I
either one of
know. I
those.
know you didn't expect
Has anyone
that.
ever asked you these questions? Those two
No,
go-
this is
wow.
fun. I love this.
Wait, what song are you singing in your car by yourself?
You're so stupid. Okay. So, no, Survivor.
Oh, wow.
Like not Beyonce, the artist Survivor.
Oh, wow.
The band where it's like I can't hold back. Yeah. It's like
that was
early
pretty
80s.
Yeah.
Hair band. I know it's
Wow.
stupid. I know.
No, it's not stupid at all.
Oh my God, I have a funny story because I used to
Yeah.
work on, see, this is why you do this. So it prompts all these things and it's great conversation. You are a
Yes.
great interviewer and it's fun. It's like you're having you're having a barbecue and we're just.
That's right. Family reunion.
So I worked in development at 51 Minds, which they did Surreal Life, Flavor of Love, Rock of Love and everything. So when Bret Michaels came to Chicago, Jonathan's friends are lawyers and professors at the U of C.
Right.
And I said to him, I'm going to go see Bret at whatever, Joe's Pub or something like that. And I said, do you want to invite a couple so we can meet with him? And none of his friends wanted to go. I'm like, really? And they're like, no. So I take Jonathan with me. And, after the concert, we sit on Bret's bus. And Bret is really smart, right? So he
Right.
talked about finance, and Jonathan was really enjoying the conversation. And about 45 minutes later, I'm like, sweetheart, we have to go. And he's like, wow, I'm having such a nice time. I said, because Bret has other people that are wanting to come join him. Well, have him come. Well, it's a party. I was like, no, it's not a party for you. It's not, we have to go. So he didn't get it. So as I'm walking off the bus and hug him and say goodbye, all of the groupies that were lined up there were looking at me like, how did you have 45 minutes alone with him, and giving me these stares? And then my husband walks in after me and they're confused, right? Because they're like, was he having, what was going on right there? So, but no, Bret is really, really smart, lovely. It was fun. But
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great story. Favorite Yiddish word? Shtick, mashugana, putz, tuchus, or chutzpah?
Probably I use shtick more than anything.
Of course you would.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do I use schmuck too, but shtick more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah, schmuck's a good one too. I didn't have that in the list, but I probably should have added that one.
Yeah.
Probably dealing with a lot of schmucks, especially in your early years.
Yeah.
Among other things. Yeah. Well, we're approaching the 50th anniversary of Title IX next year. And so women have come a long way, and you're one of those kind of pioneers, especially for in the entertainment industry, and for Jewish women and women in general, and women of Cuban descent. I mean, it's just amazing. Matzo ball soup, gefilte fish, or latkes?
I am a sucker for latkes with sour cream.
Oh, applesauce?
Sour cream.
Just sour cream. Wow. Favorite male athlete of all time?
I have no idea.
No.
A crazy story, because my best friend would laugh, and you will laugh at this. So when I was running the division of Endemol USA Latino, we get a call from Dwayne Wade's manager saying he wants to have a meeting to discuss a reality show and everything. And we're like, okay. So, and my best friend, who is like started her job at Modell's sporting goods store. Like she was huge, Puerto Rican, she, heavy into sports. I am not. So I hang up and I'm like, is Dwayne Wade the one that was on that TV show that that was like with the Cosby girl, like Lisa Bonet, where it was like Dwayne Wayne, like right, the Dwayne Wayne, and she's like, please don't ever repeat that.
That's right.
Again. And I was like, okay. Okay, no problem.
Just kidding. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So Dwayne Wade is your favorite male athlete of all time.
When I know of. No,
That's
you
right.
know, it's like, no, I don't.
I mean, your
really-
husband doesn't talk about Michael Jordan. I mean,
No,
Wow.
because he's not a big sports fan. He went,
Oh, wow.
to Bulls games. He owned a rooftop across from the Cubs.
Wow.
So he was sued by the Cubs. So the kids are like indoctrinated growing up in Chicago that go Cubs go. And we're like, no Cubs go, no. So they're like, why? I'm like, well, the Cubs sued your father.
Wow, that's awful. They're on my bucket list. Wrigley Field's on my bucket list too.
Yeah, you
Man,
have
I'm
to.
have to.
Yeah, you have to go.
Yeah, I still have to go. Okay. Do you have a favorite female athlete of all time?
I'm still in awe by female gymnasts. I mean, to look
Simone
at
Biles.
Simone
Yeah.
Biles, and even at Ellie Raceman, and like to look at what they've done, and Carrie Strug, and like over the years of watching what
Dominique
they were doing with
Dawes.
their bodies
Yeah.
through.
Oh.
Yeah, but I mean, athletics really. When I tell you, when I had to sign for the bikini competition where it says athlete or non-athlete, I clicked non-athlete, and they're like, my coach's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, it asked like for the registration, not I am a non-athlete." She's like, so
God damn it.
it's a mindset. It really is.
Oh God. And your kids play sports, so that's fun.
Two of them do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, couple more questions. If you could have any 5 people at your dinner table, past or present, non-sport, I usually say sports or non-sports, but sports is never going to be a thing with you. So what 5 people would be at your dinner table?
I'm sorry, because I mean, it really is a sports like podcast.
Oh,
But you got the
we're
deli side.
diversified.
Yeah, well, you got the deli side of it. So I got the food
Right.
covered.
Yes.
Ayn Rand.
Oh.
Alive or not alive, right? Not alive.
Yep.
Mayim Bialik.
I don't know who that is.
She was on the Big Bang Theory, Jewish, but she's doing a whole podcast about the mental breakdown.
Oh,
And
wow.
she leads with her heart. She's going to be the new host for Jeopardy.
Oh, yeah, right.
And she's a neuroscientist. So she is.
Wow.
She's just, Brene Brown, because I find the things that she talks about are really incredible. And I like philosophers. I like, when they think differently and they force you to think.
Nietzsche.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know how you say you only know a couple of sports people, or you could only name a couple of people in sports? Nietzsche's probably the one philosopher that I could name. If you asked me to name a second, I probably
Aristotle.
could. Oh, Aristotle. That's true. 2, I know 2. That's 4, I think. You got one more person at the table. Be your grandmother?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to have my grandmother there now, knowing what I know.
Wow.
I've spoken to her before now that she's passed, but
Wow.
but it would be nice to be like, what are you solid on? And actually the Rebbe too, because when the Rebbe gave that prophecy, I'm curious, like, where does that come from for him? I mean, he's a seer, and the Bible talks about seers. They talk about prophets,
Right.
but I feel very uncomfortable with the word prophet. So when you talk about people who see, people see all the time. And so does that make every seer a prophet? And also, how did those messages come in? And how are you so secure with those prophecies? And how often are you wrong? Like and
Like
that's
Nostradamus.
my husband's brain. Yeah, and that's my husband's brain pushing into it. But I think that's what made the book a better book, and that's what made the story a better story, is because he didn't just let me sit back on saying, okay, it's a spiritual experience. The doctors are saying it's a spiritual experience. He was like, no, this is, he was like, you need to ask more questions because it keeps happening. So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, it seems like your marriage has strengthened because of this whole experience, and it seems like your communication is amazing, and just lessons that every kid can learn from, just every couple could learn from, and just the
But it doesn't,
layers are endless.
well, I don't want
Ah.
the audience to think that it doesn't come without struggles, right?
Well,
Because
yeah, of course.
for several years post, I had a feeling of I wasn't protected. You know, my husband, the
Oh.
one person who I trust with my heart and soul, that I lean into, that I am completely enamored by, didn't listen to me. And so in the recovery, it took several years to go through the process of, you didn't hear me. And now how do I trust that you can hear me? And so the intimacy takes a major hit, then his insecurity hits, then mine,
Wow.
because I don't feel sexy. And like, so then all of a sudden you're having lack of intimate moments, and then you're like, okay, well, what do we have here? And so it takes an effort and a desire to rebuild or build off of something new and what your new normal is. So nothing happens without, you know, a lot of push to make it happen, as we see with anything. But yeah,
I appreciate you being so open and honest and candid about that. And it's interesting. Do you look at it now where you know each other better, and like maybe your love languages are different, and so that explains some of it?
it is. And I think that's what's making this, I think that's what the producer felt in the first draft that he had read, and why the talent wasn't jumping on. He's like, I think you need to go back to your truth. And I felt like I was writing a fictionalized version of it, like a notebook version of a spiritual experience. And he's like, go back to the truth. And I told Jonathan this actually 2 nights ago. I said, these experiences we've had over the last few months have made me not just a better writer, but explain in great detail that feeling that I feel of just leaning so far in that, and it's not to take it into a dark place, but it's like a feeling like just, I don't even have another word for it other than that I'm owned. Like, he owns me. Like, it's not in a weird way, but it's almost like I'm not going anywhere. Like, there's no plan B, there's no option, anything. It's like, there's no one who knows me more, and vice versa. Like, there's no one who knows us more, where we have this level of such profound trust and love. That's like, I just want everybody to have that, but it comes from a level of honesty of just sharing just your biggest fears, and also feeling like you can lean into them, and that other person has you with their safety net.
Well, everyone has a different definition of for better, for worse.
Yeah.
And you certainly have tapped into that over the last several years. And both of you seem like you're better versions of yourself, and following your inner compasses and your inner voices in a way that maybe you couldn't possibly have before all of this. And that is fascinating. Oh, amazing.
Thank you.
Definitely number one on my list of favorites. I mean, it's just mind blowing. And this is why I have tried to branch out since the death of George Floyd, to connect some dots, because I don't consider myself an influencer. I consider myself a connector at the very least. And so it's been interesting to push my boundaries a little bit, to see if maybe there's one person that's impacted by people's stories, whether it's David Meltzer, whether it's you, whether it's Kelly Gunther, whether it's Barbara Majeski. I mean, if you'd have told me, number one, about Clubhouse, and you had told me that I would have 4 people from Breakfast with Champions on my very unknown podcast, I would have told you you're crazy. And so I want my daughter to be a better version of herself, just like you want your kids to be. And you guys are both, as parents, testimonials to going into a deeper part of who you are that you could have continued to run away from or faced head on. And that's just an amazing testament to the both of you.
So what do you do with this now, Michael? Like,
Long term, or are you talking like literally?
No, I'm talking long term. Like, what are you doing in your life, and then make that decision to launch this podcast? And What?
Well, I initially was just talking sports because I know sports so well. And then I just realized that something spoke to me being from Detroit. And I was like, I can't be complicit anymore. Like,
Mhm.
this is just ridiculous. And so I don't want to force it down people's throat like you talked about earlier, but I also have to do something different as a white ally. And so African Americans and people of color and the Latino and Latina community and the LGBTQ community, a lot of these different spaces have been preaching and talking and begging and yelling and screaming at mountaintops for years. And other people are so arrogant to tell them about themselves and not doing something about it, whether it's just simply pushing the conversation forward, not in the face of another murder, but just continuing to talk about it and to be a part of policy changes and mobilization so that things do change and the narratives shift and we bridge gaps, because there's still too many disconnects and gaps between women of color and people of color. And forget about reparations on all the other discussions we could talk about. But so, and then to answer your second part of your question, long term, I don't know where it's going. I'm letting it grow organically, but I want the freedom to be able to go privately coach kids as a professional basketball skills trainer. I want to be able to do my podcast to, even if it reaches 10 people that day.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where it's going to go long term, but I'm learning as I go. I'm trying to listen and I'm trying to pay it forward. As I heard David on Breakfast with Champions today say, he's 62. And so he said for the first time, he's actually thinking about if he dies, that people will say, well, he's had a good life. And so, you know, when you're younger, you don't think that way. It's like, oh, it's such a tragedy that they died so young. And so you and I and David and Barbara, you know, and others in the 50, 60 range and older, you know, we think about, you know, have we had a good life? And have we either done our bucket list stuff or, you know, are we making the most of every day?
Yeah.
So you know it is way better than most how to make the most of every day and not waste any time and still find that balance, you know, that you need in your life every day, whether it's meditating or yoga, you know, recharging your batteries, you know,
I'm
decompressing.
in menopause now. It sucks.
God dang it. It is bullshit.
Such fucking bullshit. Yeah. You
So
think
I
you
don't
got it figured out and then you get
Yeah.
sideswiped, but yeah.
Bam. Oh my God. Sorry. Women do not have it as easy as guys. That's for damn sure in any stretch of the imagination. So I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, I don't know if I'll get picked up at some point. I don't know if this is what I'm going to do. And I just, I've wanted to always impact and not care about income. So that's what I'm doing.
I mean, you actually are a great interviewer. You have really good skills and good instinct on it. So from someone who's worked in TV most of her career, it's nice to see, and you're getting me to talk about stories I don't really talk about. So, so it's good. You have a natural ability.
Well, I was a communication major. I thought I was going to be a basketball referee in the NBA. So that ship sailed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I've just tried to pay it forward through sports. And so now I've listened to more stories about people on here, mostly professional athletes who have talked about depression, who've talked about killing themselves. You know, you've talked about dying, literally. And so, you know, the more people die while they're living, you know, it helps them to be more in touch with, you know, life as they move forward.
Yeah.
Man, amazing. Well, I can't thank you enough. You could be going on, you know, Conan or somebody in the evening and you're spending, you know, 90 minutes with us. I truly can't thank you enough.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So
I'll
stay.
Like you say, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I spent time on Dr. Oz and that was not impactful whatsoever. That was just a waste of time. But I'd rather be here and have a laugh and have a moment, and you never know who's listening. And just like with Breakfast with Champions, you know, you talk about the story, you're there, and then you're like, okay, you're off and you have no idea who has just heard that message.
Yeah. And then right after I heard David, I posted a TikTok video about it's never too late. And, you know, basically, what do you want your legacy to be? And so it's never too late. Your past does not define you.
Now I need to learn how to work TikTok because I've had a couple of things with TikTok, but I'm like, I need to get involved with Book Talk And it's just been impossible to figure out like the algorithm, because most of these book talk things on TikTok, they're fiction. And so I'm like, I know I just don't know how to create enough content for it.
So you'd have plenty of content. And so my videos are between 3. I had a video yesterday at one of my basketball training sessions, and it had over 400 people within an hour. I'm like, what is going on here? And I post dog stuff, lemon juice stuff, daughter, not as much daughter stuff, but sports stuff, life coaching stuff. Like, and they've told me to get separate accounts with everything. And so I go on this master class, and I'll let you go. I go on this master class called 8 Dragons on Clubhouse. And this lady, Hiromi, I mean, the other guy that comes on here, Teddy, he's got 20 million followers. They give free advice every day, just like, you know, in any of the other rooms on Clubhouse. And I go in there for at least an hour every other day to listen to these tips. And I've tried all of them because, you know, the algorithm's unpredictable.
Right.
So I try stickers, no stickers. I try hashtags, no hashtags. I try closed captioning, no closed captioning, and sort of see what is thrown against the wall and hits. And I mean, first of all, it's exciting. It's fun.
Yeah.
The kids like it. My daughter's obsessed.
Yeah.
And so I've gone over 1,100 followers, and with Facebook, I don't care about Facebook, with Twitter and Instagram, I've been trying to just let it grow organically. And I just got over 600, which is nothing, but for me, it's a lot. And within 3 weeks, I was over 1,100 on TikTok.
I know. I did in the first 20 days, I had 4,000 on TikTok. And I'm like, what's going on? And then it's just too much to maintain, because TikTok, you have to constantly post every day, right? Several times a day. I have somebody just doing all the design for the social media now that I've just launched the new brand. And I just correct the writing and everything, but she does all the design. So I don't have to think about it. But for videos, I'm like, I know that I need to add more videos, but I don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Stephanie, all you have to do is say, trust your instincts. Something for 2 seconds will get 1 million views because it's you. It's so stupid. It makes no sense whatsoever. And then, you know, you'll put part 1, and then the next one's part 2. Trust your instinct, and you build off of it. Like, it's just amazing. And because people want
but then you have to put the right music and the right hashtag or the right stickers or right sound effect, right?
You do. Yes. It has to fit. It has to fit. Well, you know that better than anyone. That part should be easy for you.
Yeah, but it's not because I don't know what's trending. I'm not paying attention to it. So you have to actually have somebody who knows it, could say, use this sound effect, make a video about this, use this hashtag, and done. Like, I just need it stupid proof. Yeah.
I can't wait to watch your TikTok videos now. I'm going to start listening to the audiobook today. I walk between 5 and 10 miles a day. So I'm going to start listening, and I just haven't had the time between daughter's gymnastics and my private coaching and just everything. But thank you so much. Much love and respect to you and everything that you're doing. And so glad you're still here with us. And what a 90 minutes. I mean, you poured into me, and hopefully you got some value in this safe space. And I truly appreciate you being with us today. Amazing.
You got more than I thought you were going to get with Barry Manilow, but you know.
Oh, all right. Well, stay in touch, and anytime you want to come back and co-host with me, if I get anyone else on, I would love to have your perspective and share.
On Tuesday nights, I don't know what you're doing. 8 p.m. Central, I host The Sixth Sense.
Yes, that's right. I mentioned that in the intro, but yes.
No, it's fine. But if you're available, just jump in the room.
8 p.m. Tuesdays Central Time.
Yeah.
So that's 6.
It's the only room I do, and then periodically I'll jump into other people's Clubhouse rooms, but it's the only one that I host.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, have a phenomenal day, and man, I'm so inspired today. I can't wait to take on the day and pay it forward. It's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll talk soon. All right. Bye. Wow. That was something. If you stayed with us for the entire time, I hope that you got a lot of value out of that. Definitely a different level of conversation with her, and pushed my comfort zone to some places that I hadn't gone before. And so always would appreciate your feedback. If you want to leave a review, if you want to send me an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com and let me know what you think. about the interview, about Stephanie, about myself, anything that you could suggest to make things more efficient or better. Just again, any suggestions or disagreements would be welcomed. And so on that note, for Dr. J and Coach K, I'm Hootie Hoot. Women belong in all places where decisions are being made, especially Stephanie Arnold. So if you haven't checked out her book, 37 Seconds, it's available on Amazon, also on Audible. You can check out the series on Netflix as well. And you heard her talk about her movie that will be coming out at some point. And just an amazing time talking with her, and learned so much today. And hopefully you learned a lot and made you think a little bit about the direction that you're going and where you want to go, and you know, about communication, about relationships, trusting your instincts, and being present. You know, there's something to be said for that, even though it's really hard that we're always on the go. You know, the pandemic and, you know, something like this podcast maybe makes us give pause to, you know, going so fast with life that you don't see the trees when you're in the middle of the forest. Until next time, Black Lives Matter. Stop the Asian hate. Please talk to your local politicians about any injustices that you feel are going on, especially people that are in jail for nonviolent offenses, and especially for things that they did not commit. Anything we can do to change policy in the spaces of inequality and social injustice is part of our mission right here in the Sports Deli podcast, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. This has been a production of Hootie Hoot Productions. Remember, it takes a village. And until next time, much love. Peace.